Hi there, I'm Gill, writer.
I'm James, illustrator and designer.
And thanks for checking out our Kickstarter for Legion of the Necromancer. We're asking you to be part of our adventure as we bring our tribute to the fighting fantasy books of Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone and many more to life.
Your pledge will help us print a beautifully illustrated folio edition book that you'll want to read and play again and again. Get the game book, special edition, prints, PDFs, and other limited edition treats as we launch our own series of epic choose your own adventure books. Join us.
Pledge. Thank you. So what follows now is a bit of an explainer video. James and I are going to cover various aspects of the project, from inspiration to the story to the graphics and so on. But knowing you and I, James, there'll probably be a lot in between, probably a few bloopers and some nonsense.
Yeah, we do tend to waffle a bit, but we're going to try and keep to the point.
Try and keep to the point. Okay, so my first question, this is to keep me in line. I've got a handful of questions. Cool. Marketing legend Simon Sinek says you should always start with why, right? Don't start with how or what you're going to do. Start with why. So I'm interested to know why you wanted to do this project. When we talked before Christmas last year, why did you want to do it when we had the idea?
I mean, don't get a big head over this. It's because it was with you, right? I know. Calm down. But no, it's like we geek out about a lot of things, don't we? Whether it's music or films or whatever. And we just hit this sweet spot of like fantasy kind of geekdom where we both realized we both love these old school game books, these choose your own adventure books. And then we just suddenly had this kind of realization where, wait a minute, you're a writer, I'm an artist and designer, what else do we need? And I think at that point we realized, why don't we just do it? And that point, we kind of needed no other kind of impetus really. It was all kind of set in the stars and we just went for it.
Yeah, I think for me there's a bit of if you love something, you also want to make it. And I don't know that everyone feels that way, but certainly I love music, so I kind of wanted to make it. So you become a DJ, you get in a band, and loving, and particularly in the last few years, revisiting and recollecting all of the old fighting fantasy books from when I was young. I was like, it's not enough to just sit and read one. I wanted to make one. And of course, that conversation we had before Christmas, it just seemed so screamingly obvious that you and I should totally do one.
Yeah.
And actually, again, the idea of being able to do that with you, because we don't work together anymore, having worked together in the past, and it's such a perfect creative combination of writer and an artist, that it just seemed like a no-brainer. And the fact that you said yes meant that I triply wanted to do it as well.
Oh, stop. Also, I think making our own book would put a full stop to your insane eBay addiction to buying vintage fighting fantasy books, because looking at the shelf behind you, there's a lot of green up there.
Yeah.
So I think at some point you were like, look, I could spend my entire life savings on these books, or I could just make my own. So I'm glad you agreed to do it.
Yeah, that's it. So what? Because it's a lot less expensive to make your own book than it is to buy some old books. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you. It's a big question. So how would you describe Legion of the Necromancer? What is it?
Well, for me, it's like when we agreed to do our own book, right? Instead of going really deep into a specific genre or a specific kind of niche part of fantasy lore, I kind of wanted us to kind of get our chops, get our kind of heads in the game by doing something that was just so classical, had a bit of everything that I loved about the original books. So it wasn't one specific thing, it was lots of little bits of everything that I loved, which is problem solving, really good monsters, really good fighting, a great story, a really good villain, all these kind of things. And for me, that just made the perfect storm of what I loved about those previous books. I thought if we could do that on the first book, really get our heads in the game, which I think we've done brilliantly. So then going forward on the second book and third book, we can start to really expand and really push some crazy ideas. But so this first one, I just wanted it to be that proper love letter we always wanted to make, and so that was it. And I think that's why it works so well, because it's just the greatest hits of why I loved those original books.
Yeah, I think I wanted to do something. So yeah, how would I describe Legion of the Necromancer? Is you could call it the 52nd of the Fighting Fantasy series, in that it's familiar. There are familiar structures and frameworks. It's 400 paragraphs. It's got the feeling of those originals, but exactly to your point, we've introduced other elements of lore. It's in a different universe. There are monsters that you've never seen in any of the originals. So we've given it our own twist, and of course it's all of your illustrations in your particular style. So that's what I really, really hope is it's something that's familiar enough that you can enjoy it and get into it and do it quickly, but that's always got fresh turns and kind of like anything, humans are always going to improve the previous iteration and add on and build on and add on and build on, and hopefully that's what people will get. So that's what I think it is. It's the sort of it's our springboard, as you said, it's our springboard into the future for future ones. So familiar but fresh. God, I should work in marketing.
You should put that on your business card.
What a springboard. So who is this book? Who's this book for?
Right. Well, I think it's obviously for the people like me and you who loved the books back in the day when they were kids. And we've spoken to a few people, and we know we've had a demo book out to a few people to test, to see what they think. There you go. This is not, by the way, the finished artwork. This is just a test book that's still in production. Oh, spoilers. But a few people have just come back with some brilliant stuff, and it really changed my thinking on this, and the fact that, you know, people like me and you will buy it, people who love the original books. A lot of those people might have kids now, and, you know, parents want to share something with their kids, you know, whether it's sport or TV or music or the world of fantasy and fiction and game books, you know, why not? But there's a real groundswell of fantasy community at the moment with, you know, Dungeons and Dragons and Critical Role and all these brilliant things. So I feel there's like a whole new community who really appreciate these books. So I feel like it's like, you know, you go to an Iron Maiden concert, it's full of 50, 60-year-old dudes, and then it's just full of kids. It's full of, you know, all these people that have just discovered this thing that's been going for ages, and they can share that love and share that passion. And that's what we found from the people who've read the test book. You know, it's people of all ages, all backgrounds who are really getting into it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what people think.
You totally pinched my line about Iron Maiden, because that was going to be my analogy. Is, you know, when something's new, it's usually you know, teenagers or kids that get into the new thing.
Yep.
But then it gets passed down a generation, and now is the generation, because the first books, I think the first one came out, Warlock of Fire Top Mountain came out in like 81, 2, maybe 3. And so if you were 10, which is, they were aimed for like, you know, 9 to 11-year-olds, those people are now, exactly as you said, having kids. But when I read up on Ian Livingstone and Steve Jackson, they were saying they weren't really actually aimed at kids. They just happened to be based in something that was broadly seen as a bit kiddie, but it's not really. So exactly your point, we're seeing, you and I wanted to do it. I've been rereading all of the old ones. We know people who do the same, but exactly to your point, some of the people who we sent the testers out to, big shout out to my pal Ollie, who took it as a teacher. And so during break times, had a load of 10-year-old boys and girls all playing the game books. And to your point, they love it. So it's now we're operating in 2 generations, which I would have thought in the mid-80s for the originals would have been very difficult to find a bunch of, you know, grey-haired old dudes to go, this is amazing. So yeah, I think it has broad appeal, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think the one thing you told me, which I really, really loved about what Ollie did at school, or what happened at school, is normally, like when I was playing these books as a kid, I would sit at home, read it, get the dice out, you know, get into the zone. But these guys were doing it as a group. You know, they're all sat around reading the book, and they're all like, you know, deliberating and debating about what decisions to make. And it became like, you know, like D&D, where you play as a troupe, you play as a band. And I just thought that was amazing. That's something I never really thought would happen, but they just organically did it themselves. I don't think that's brilliant. That's something I think we're going to take forward into, you know, future books, and how we might change how gameplay happens, and, you know, really kind of expand it. And I'll be honest, yeah, these kids are probably going to tell us more than people of our age would, because I think they don't have a filter, which I think we appreciate very much.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword.
Totally.
So just as a sort of a potted sort of know, what can people expect from the book?
Well, I mean, I think we've always said there's a certain sense of familiarity. You know, it's like a comfy pair of jeans that you find a £20 note in, you know? Because it's got this kind of thing where you can dip straight in and feel like you said, it's the next iteration, the next generation of those classic, you know, not just fighting fantasy, but choose your own adventure and all those kind of beautiful kind of brands of books that are happening in the 70s and 80s. It definitely, you know, has all the benefits and all the good things that those books had, but it's got a little bit fresh twist. You know, we are tipping our hat to all those old masters, but we're bringing things a little forward. So hopefully there are new modern trends and new modern kind of community spirits that we're going to inject into all these books. So I think people are going to feel, very familiar, very at home with these books, but also energized. I think energized by the fact that A, we brought them back, and B, it's a fresh twist on what they love. Yeah,
I think surprises is the bit that I like. The great thing about familiarity is that surprises are easier, because if something feels like, oh yes, you know, I'm turning here, I'm turning there, I'm rolling a few dice, but then when you get the twists and all the new things that we've layered in, you get all these lovely surprises and new things to think about, and that's kind of I guess what part of what will make it work.
So I want to know from you a bit about the world itself of Elrathia. What shaped its tone and themes?
So you and I spoke when we first got super excited about that we would do this, and then it comes to the what would it be? I think we both agreed we wanted something that felt like the originals, and so it would be a sort of Tolkien-esque, you know, universe, orcs and dwarves and wizards and various monsters. So that's the level of familiarity. So, but tonally, so that's the themes are in that, and evil wizards and malevolent forces and so on. So that's the theme. But in terms of the tone, I think this is what makes it ours, is that I'm a big lover of horror and sci-fi, and where those sort of two things meet, and fantasy, of course. You can sort of see, as you said, people probably not be listening to us, but like just looking at what's on our shelves respectively. But so the tone, I wanted to inject that. The bits that I really like in the old books are where it's terrifying, where it's really kind of nail-biting, white-knuckle stuff. So there's a bit more of that folded in. It's not that it's gory, but I'm hoping it's a bit more terrifying. And then layering in stuff. I know you and I both big fans of H.P. Lovecraft, and trying to fold those elements in. And maybe purists might come back to us and say, well, you can't have this. So one of the beta readers flagged that one of the dwarves in it starts talking about Valhalla, and said to me, well, he's a dwarf. Valhalla, you're mixing your Viking lore up there with your Tolkien-esque universe. So and I'm just, you know, we're a pair of punks ultimately, and we're just going to do what we think is great. I think it works well. So hopefully that answers that question about tone, being a little darker, I think, right? And you know, from your point of view, let me ask you with the illustrations, is that mapped with the tone? I think is.
Yeah, I think so, and it kind of explains a lot. You know, why you know, when you kind of asked for me to draw Cthulhu to go in there, so it explains the whole Lovecraft, you know, love affair you've got going on there. But yeah, explains a lot. Okay, so what kind of story did you want to tell? How did you make it work in a branching format? That must have been.
So, well, actually, the original story, of course, the story idea is yours, which is an evil necromancer wants to raise an army of the dead, and is sort of trying to overpower your homeland. So that's your original story, and I was immediately like, yes, and that'd be amazing. And so the branching format, I think, I don't know about you, but when I was reading the original books, my dad's a builder, so they're always like big blueprints around the house. So I'd get one of these A1 blueprints, flip it over, and map all the books. And then my pal, oddly, I mentioned before, but it was also called James, he and I would trade the map and the book. And so he'd give me the book I had read, but with the like giant piece of paper with all like, go here, don't go here, sudden death. So I had a sense in my mind of the amount of branching that needed to happen. You know, what does it look like when you write a novel? It's a straight line. Whereas these need to have, as you said, branching. So actually, look, I've got these things. So you end up doing all these sorts of things. And I did City of Thieves to kind of refresh myself, which I think is the third or fourth book, to see like what's the shape of the story or stories, and obviously they're very varied, and so I think tried to see it in 3 or 4 chunks, and you and I spoke about this. We had the sort of, you know, countryside, caverns, forests, tower, and then you can start to sort of do that to make it manageable, so it's not chaotic, so you're not just sort of, and you know, you have to plan it. So yeah, mapping, visualizing. See, I told you, it's all about the visuals. All about the visuals.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if anyone knows, but obviously you've written a few books before in the sci-fi universe. I've got them up here. Thank you for signing them. Did you approach writing this like a novel or more like a game?
I definitely approached it like writing, certainly fiction, maybe not a novel, but I mean, I wouldn't really know how to write a game. I'd be so fascinated to ask Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone and Mark Gascoigne and the other guys who wrote these books how they would answer that question. What I did find is, having, in the run-up to us doing this, I just naturally, again, been sort of falling into the nostalgia, and I read maybe 10 of them. And so actually the writing felt like I got into the groove. I'm a professional writer, you know, marketing, and you and I worked at Metal Hammer together. So I'm a writer, and I feel like I've got that dial in my mind. You're writing fiction in bits. It's always a story. You know, it's more like a novel in that it's all about imagination and characters and dialogue and imagery. The gameplay is a sort of a structure rather than the bit that you feel. You know, you're inside the game, but the bit that you kind of interact with is the story. Don't know if that's a complete cop out of an answer, but that's how I feel about it.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. To you at least, that's fine. But there is, I think you've mentioned this before, but there is a gothic kind of horror element. And I know, looking at your bookshelf, there's quite a lot of stuff up there. Obviously, a lot of fantasy, a lot of gaming, lots of, you know, Feist, stuff like that. But is there anything specific that kind of influenced your input of the horror aspect of the book?
There is some of it in the originals, but Stephen King does a lot of very sort of psychological horror, sort of, you know, ESP and you know, that sort of stuff. So there's a bunch of that sort of stuff in there. Although it's in the original Fighting Fantasy books a bit, but definitely Lovecraft in the kind of the density and the claustrophobia of the sort of the darkness of the creeping gibbous moon and the creature of unageless eldritch.
Hold on. We're not doing the audio book yet.
We're not doing the
save it for the audible.
And that may be something again that's different for us. If you go through, maybe you notice this, because obviously you laid it out, is that actually the paragraphs, the sections generally are longer than in the originals.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, it wasn't conscious, but it just came out naturally that I think I wanted to put a bit more detail. So maybe it is a little more like a novel than the game, because it's a little more to read with each decision. But again, it's how we're making it part of how we're making it ours.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. Now, I'll be honest, you went hell for leather when you wrote this book. Like, you started, and then I think before I'd even finished the first few illustrations, you were like, finished! But was there any moment where you were kind of thinking about chucking it and starting again? Like, in the creative process, there's always those moments where you have those moments of self-doubt, and you think, just you know, hit delete and start again. Did anything like that happen to you?
No, you know the answer to that, because you know that you and I are different in the sense that you're a perfectionist. Everything's absolutely perfect, whereas I'm like an 85% get it done real quick energy kind of person. But I cannot finish and sort of fine tune. I know that doesn't answer the question, but the thing is, it was so much fun to write. And actually, I think going back to fiction again, as you mentioned, I think it's maybe 3 or 4 like self-published science fiction short stories and a couple of novels. That a lot of the time the computer was like repelling me from it. It's like, I've got to finish that thing, I've got to read my own thing again. And actually the writing the novel is a bit of a slog. This was so fun. And because it's chunked, you know that when you've written 400 paragraphs, you're done.
Yeah.
It's like an advent calendar. With a novel, you never know. You have no sense of where you are up climbing the mountain. But also because each bit you write, you're doing imagination-y things, because the broad plot is there, and so you can add in anything. So towards the end, I realized that we had a bunch more entries, and so I'm just like, okay, cool, I can dream up a new cool interaction, a new monster, and a new hidden thing, to kind of piece of equipment that might be consequential later. It is so fun writing these books and talking to you as well about, oh, I've got some space, what would a new interaction be? And also, of course, exciting for me is getting to dream up crazy mad beasts and things like that, and being able to say to you, dude, what would this look like, and guessing what it would be like. So I have to say, I never even slightly came close. Maybe if I do 30, how many of the originals I did? I've got 39 up there. Maybe I'll get tired, but it's so fun to write. And actually the game stuff is very fun to write. So, I mean, I realise I've kind of got all amped now. It's my lunchtime coffee has hit the vein. So, go. So I want to ask you, this is a big question, but what was the kind of the broad visual vision for the book, and how did it evolve, if it evolved? What was your starting point for that first conversation we had?
The first conversation we had, obviously, we were looking at a lot of 70s, 80s fantasy books, but mainly for me, the illustrations. And we know that we both have our favourite guys, our favourite artists and favourite writers of, say, the Fighting Fantasy brand. And there's someone like, Russ Nicholson was the OG, right? Like, he wrote so many books, and like I know, like, both of our desks are just covered in books, covered in just like game books everywhere. And whenever I need, it's just glorious, isn't it? Whenever I need inspiration, wherever I need, stop, you're making me feel bad. But whenever I need like a bit of an impetus or a bit of an energy kick, I just look through a bunch of old illustrators, stuff like that, like Alan Lee, the guy who did all the brilliant illustrations for Lord of the Rings, and Tom Young, who did the kind of the Lord of the Rings animated movie poster and stuff like that. These kind of, I did have the posters of that on my bedroom wall when I was a kid, that later got replaced with like Skid Row posters and stuff like that as I grew older and less wiser. But those kind of illustrations, I think with anything creative, you just look to the things that give you energy. And for me, it was, Russ Nicholson and Bob Harvey, all those amazing illustrators who did those fantasy books. And they did it in a style which I really wanted to do, which was traditional pen and ink, quills, brushes, all that style. So no computers, no AI, nothing like that. This is all done very traditionally. And I wanted to challenge myself that way. I wanted to do something I'd never done before, in the same way that we're both doing something we've never done before, but we always wanted to. So yeah, me reverting to 12-year-old James drawing dragons and orcs and elves and stuff. This is brilliant, I can't ask for more.
So how did you decide, and maybe you have answered that question when I push on this, how did you decide on the particular style? Because of course, not every artist could or would want to deliver a sort of a facsimile of their inspirations. How would you describe your take on that traditional style?
It's kind of odd, because you kind of have to.
I want to show some. I mean, I want to flash these up. I want to sort of show these illustrations that you've done for people to see as we talk. I mean, answer the question, James. I'm just going to flip through some of those. You've got the yellows there, look.
I've got the original. Yeah, I've got the actual papers here. But this might be a better way to show it, because the very first one I did. Now this might take a while, but the very first I won was the troll coming under the bridge. And like you were like, oh, it's brilliant, it's fantastic, and I was like, there's so much wrong with this. There was so much wrong with this. And every time I would do a new illustration, I would learn from the previous one about what works, what doesn't. And I still made mistakes, and there's still illustrations I would probably replace or, improve on. So that's the first one I did. And it's pretty, looking back at it now, there's still so much I like about it. But there's still so much I want to change or wanted to change. But I'm sure that's with every, like a musician probably looks back at an album and goes, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. The harpsichord solo was probably a bit much. But so I learned every illustration, I took something from the last one and tried to improve. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So the difference between the very first illustration and the very last illustration, to me, are absolutely worlds apart. But all in all, it kind of holds together. Because I did change style a little bit as I went through, but in the same way that, you're in a different place, when you start a project, when you finish a project. So it definitely developed and evolved, and I'm kind of looking forward to the next book, because I felt like I got to a certain level that you helped me with. And then when we start this second book, you know, I'll be able to, again, just continue to improve and learn all those things and take all those lessons on board. Sorry, that's a really long answer. I'm not even sure.
It's brilliant. It's so interesting because of what's the same but what's different about writing and the development of that. And you've made me think that there are definitely, at the beginning when I started writing, because I didn't write it all completely in order for structural reasons, is a lot of sort of quite heavy, dense Lovecraftian stuff that actually you ease off in some places, and then you realize that you've eased off, and so you sort of put your foot down again a bit more with the density of macabre, crepuscular creatures crawling from, you know, that kind of style. So it's interesting because you're right. So what are you saying then is that the last ILO you did, was that the Ghost Hunter?
Yeah, and again, weirdly enough, I learned so much from it, but again, there's so much about it I don't like. I think I don't know, it might change the face, but we'll see. This is the problem. You think everything I've done is amazing. I think everything you've done is amazing, but we're both very critical of our own work. Which
I think I'm amazing too, James.
Okay. But there's certain things. I think. I mean that. Yeah, the actual Necromancer.
That was a late one. I pulled that out because that was a late one, wasn't it? You did that.
That was quite late, yeah. And that's when I started to bring in this pointillism kind of style, the dots, the scratches, which I think is something very similar to like some of those old school techniques, which I think Bob Harvey was using quite a lot. And so for me, that's something I want to, you know, evolve for myself in my own style. So yeah, I'm taking those lessons and like trying to wrap it up in what I like doing. So hopefully, you know, the more I do, suddenly people will be, oh, maybe that's a James Isaacs illustration, because they'll know that, oh, he's taking a bit of that, taking a bit of that. You know, it's got my smell on it.
Yeah, I don't even, yeah, your smelly signature.
My smelly signature.
What was the biggest challenge of designing for a book like this? Because obviously you've had commissions before, and as a designer, I mean, this is what you do for a living, is design, is creativity, in that sense, in the briefs. What were the challenges about designing a book that's interactive, in particular, non-linear, if there was anything?
Well, it's a modular book, isn't it, in a way? But like you said, you're not designing a straight line novel where you have 200 pages and you flow the copy in. It's just kind of flowing through the whole book. With this, obviously, you're designing per page, because every single page has got its own uniform and self-bordered paragraphs that don't let, if something changes in one, it shouldn't affect the other pages, because suddenly then everything's overflowing or everything's been pulled back. So everything has to be its own little world, every single page, and anything that happens on that page can't affect the next one. Otherwise, it would just be like this domino effect. So I think the problem was everything was so. I wasn't designing a book. I was designing almost like 200 tiny little books, where you know you'd be designing full-page illustrations to take up a whole page, and you want to make sure that illustration goes next to the paragraph it's referenced to. So you have these key anchors throughout the whole novel that can't change. They have to be next to each other. And then all the other paragraphs in between all these big moments have to fit. And so that's when I, designed all the little tiny little, what do we call them? Kicker illustrations.
Kickers, yeah.
Yeah, which just kind of, like this. This is the original pen thing. There you go. I designed a whole series of those, which can just, I quite like this one.
So good.
So you can see, look at that lovely bit of real ink there. But yeah, so putting those in gave us this kind of ability, this fluidity that we could, if something needed to be longer or shorter, you just make the kicker illustration a little bit bigger, a little bit smaller. So you could fill that page without worrying about messing up the copy. So that was the biggest challenge. Everything else was just, time really, because we both have full-time jobs. We both have other things in our life that isn't fantasy based. So we have to find a balance with that. So yeah, we've been working on this a while now, and it hasn't felt like work, but it does take time. So I think those are the two challenges, but now we're at the stage now it's done, and we're just waiting to kind of get it out into the world, release it into the wild. It's exciting. So yeah, all those challenges don't feel like challenges now.
And you say we're done. Actually, because we've got a dozen or so books out in the wild with beta readers who are to make sure that the finished product really works, is proper. We're serious people. It's a serious project, and so actually there's a bunch of things that people have spotted, about the gameplay and about, there's loads of typos and bits I need to sort out text-wise, but that will be in the finished one. This is the perfecting to make sure it's completely perfect. I wanted to say a thing about the illustrations. You've heard me say this, but I want to say is when working on this, you'd be like, right, what's the next illustration? After like the troll under the bridge, like what do you want next? And I think, we had a list of things, and you were like, I want to do this one, that one. And then we say, how about this? And you say, what's the brief? And for me, it's so awesome being able to say to someone as talented as you, oh, what I want is like a monster. It's a bit like a banshee, but it's really tall, and it's dark, and it's standing over this. And you're like, right. And then the next day, I get this insane illustration in my phone. You WhatsApp me, and I get this illustration. It's been amazing. And so then a couple of days, and you have a bit of a gap. It's a weekend. You're like, right, what's next? Okay, witches. You're like, boom. It's just been the most amazing part of this project for me. Is being able to do that and knowing how awesome it's going to be.
It's like a fantasy drive-through. You drive up to the window. It's like, oh, I'd like a race, two necromancers and a witch, please. And then you drive around, and there's me just handing you. Because I think the one thing you were quite keen on was the this guy.
Oh,
right?
the night ghast.
Did you describe this guy? It's like this kind of weird insectoid zombie mammal with a gaping maw and huge, like, elongated limbs. And I was like, how do I start with that? So then you just kind of sketch it, because there's no wrong or right answer, is there, when you're kind of creating something or drawing something? It's just the way you see it. But I think we have a similar vision about what is right and what's wrong. And so if something, there were a few occasions where I sent you a sketch, you'd be like, oh, it needs to be more scary, or it needs to be more this or more that. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. So I go away and come back, rub out some pencils, do another sketch, send it over, like, great, that's perfect, and then the ink goes on. So there was this really nice process. It wasn't just, you feed the ticket in the machine, illustration comes out. Like, there was a certain amount of to and fro, and that's what made it better. We both had a say and an input and ideas about everything. It's good.
It's definitely a thing for writers. You realise that a lot of what is in your mind as the writer, you have not actually put on the page. And that's, we all know that when we're telling stories or, describing something, we have it very clearly in our mind what the object looks like. And we might say only 4 sentences. I mean, maybe we've all done those games at Christmas where you have to describe an object, put a triangle over 2 circles and make this, and then draw a squiggly line from here. And it's supposed to be a fire engine. And it just looks like, mess. And that's so realizing that what I've put on the page is not always what's been in my mind. So that you're right. It's a great, the fun of collaboration.
Exactly.
So I'm going to ask you as well. It's an obvious question, but I'm actually, and maybe it changes. What is your favorite illustration? If you had to have one to replace the numbers in the frame on the wall behind you, if you could pick one.
The numbers in the frame, that's a classic bit of graphic design art, that. I'll be honest, I can't pick one.
Can you not?
I've got 3 that I really...
Okay, give me the 3.
I love. Okay, so the first one is this one, which is the octopus. This, because it's got a bit of a story. I didn't really know. We had a conversation about medieval footwear. And we were like, so our adventurer, what kind of footwear? And you were like, oh, and you sent me a bunch of like British Museum archaeological digs where they found these leather boots and stuff like that. And weirdly enough, I went downstairs going, I need to look at some leather boots. And my wife had a very similar boot, but much more, fashionable and stuff. So I basically just took a picture of her boots facing downwards, and then drew some legs on, and then went to like a National Geographic site and found some octopus and stuff like that. So then just kind of pieced it all together. And for me, that's one of my favorite ones, because it has a story where you're using, real life references. If you need to draw, a skull, I've got a bunch of skulls here, which I'll be sketching and drawing, stuff like that. Another one was one of the first. Actually, these next 2 were one of the first ones as well, which I really enjoyed. Drawing this guy, Charon.
So I remember, and this is what's also fun, is that all of these, I kind of remember where I was this year, in the last sort of 10 months we've been doing it, that I'd get these pictures through. Yeah. I love that one, the reflection of the water.
I like his hand. I don't know why. It's got a really malevolent,
Yeah. Wizened.
And this guy, no spoilers, but he's just so sad. And that was the point. He was like, you're in a dungeon, you know, you're a knight in armor, you're locked in a dungeon, you're very sad, feel sorry for yourself, near death's door, and I just liked it. It's me experimenting with things like light and cross-hatching and all these different techniques that I was trying out for the first time, and I thought this one was quite successful. Quite liked it.
It's very atmospheric. And actually, here's a great sort of arty question: is making sure that the images work as a whole, and that, you know, if you have an album, you don't want every single one to be 180 BPM gabba techno, right? You've got to have a ballad on there. What a strange album that would be, but you know what I'm saying, right? You need rhythm and dynamism, and making sure that not every image is terrifying monster.
Yeah, and I think we had conversations about that, like how would you change the pace visually? And I think, because, you know, looking back at the illustrations, some of them are very straight on, you know, people in a very kind of not similar scale, but we wanted to make sure that there was some close-ups, some far away, some landscapes. So stuff like, I thought this was a nice solution, where instead of, you find a dead body on the floor and there's a tattoo, so instead of showing a whole body, just show a part, you know, and the tattoo, then you get to see the tattoo more, which is almost the important part. Another quick one was, you know, not everything has to have a figure in it or a person. So, you know, the landscape and the geography of this story is almost as important as the people in it. And I think the way you told these stories was great. And I think trying to bring some of these things to life, like Secret Door, and this is one of your favorites, like the door knockers. I know you love the door knockers.
I just love it. I think again, there's something about the lines, and that's that Russ Nicholson vibe, the density of lines. I just love it, and it's so much better than the vision that was in my head when I wrote it. So yeah, definitely Knockers is one of them. I think maybe sort of predictable because it's a really awesome monster picture, but I still think it's just incredible, the fire and the terror, and of course rather obviously for me is the Lovecraft lover.
Squid Boy. Yeah, you love your Squid Boy.
Just so
but the Balrog, obviously, you know, people are going to be, you know, it's Lord of the Rings, and it's got a quite Lord of the Rings kind of essence to it, which I think is a good thing, because this is a good excuse for me to get all those loves and kind of, you know, experiences out there. I
just read somewhere behind me, I read Magician, which is like an 80s fantasy Tolkien-esque thing. It's almost like a sort of a sequel to Lord of the Rings. It's like you're allowed to do that. It's like hip-hop culture. Sampling is in the culture.
Yeah.
And so I think people want these familiar elves and dwarves and what have you, and that's what makes it fun. We've injected our own thing to make it our own universe. So
when I used to read is it David Gemmell who did Druss the Legend books, which is basically just, you know, the next stage along from what these kind of amazing fantasy adventures were back from the Tolkien days. And people, it's like, you know, I know we keep referencing music, but there might be different bands, but there's a certain type of music that will always go on, whether it's thrash or punk or hip hop. People will always take it and run with it, and it will always become something else, but it will always have those foundational elements to it. So this is our take. This is our remix album of the greats.
Okay, so onto the Kickstarter campaign. Why are we bringing this to Kickstarter?
Well, after speaking to a few people in certain communities, and I think that's the word that got me the most, which was community. You know, these Dungeons and Dragons, these RPG groups, you know, are so passionate, and all they want to do is be involved. And I think kickstarting a project like this is the only way people can really feel involved and be part of the process. Because, you know, this is us doing this for the very first time, and I think this is the perfect time for someone to feel like they can get involved with a project like this, give us feedback. You know, this is going to be an ongoing process, and also, you know, because we're kickstarting the whole project, there's going to be certain pledge levels, there's going to be certain gifts, certain rewards, getting your name in the book, all these kind of things. And so there's a real element of teamwork, you know, not just between me and you, but me, you, and the rest of the community, which I think is why all these projects succeed, and why they're being brought forward into not just products and online things, but now there are live events, discussions, Q&A, panels, musical events, you know, all based on the fantasy world. So I think the community aspect of what we're doing is by far the greatest thing. And like going back to what we said about those kids in the school, you know, I think people are coming along to the idea of doing these things in groups together with other people rather than just on their own. And they both work, and they're both brilliant ways to experience a book like this. But I think the group and community aspect are the one thing which is going to take this forward. And I think Kickstarter is the best way to do that.
That's a really nice answer. My answer makes me sound really materialistic. I'm like, because we want to be able to create cool stuff.
Yeah, that's
people.
true.
Like the cool additions. I'm trying to think now. I've got as sort of examples. Here's my Necronomicon. You know, we want to be able to create cool like editions of this, like A5. Seeing your illustrations as they started to come in. Let's have those A5. Let's have a cool spellbook kind of vibe to it. Let's be able to print loads of your illustrations and have those as a pack or whatever to give away, or signed ones, and then you were like riffing, hey, everyone who goes to like the mega pledge, I'll do like a sketch, like a skull sketch that's unique and a dedication in the front of the book, and being able to do, you know, runs of this such that people can buy them at sensible prices. So
I mean, there is that too. Yes. Okay. Fine. You get to make some pretty things, and that's the good thing. Like, presentation is very important. I think it's very important. I'm not just saying that because I'm the visual guy, but being able to produce, and I think, you know, we are producing some brilliant stuff. We're obviously doing the paperback with the color illustration, and then we are going to be doing a luxury hardback edition with metallic foiling, and that's going to be a very luxurious product. And the combination of those and the digital edition and the digital gifts, and, you know, obviously we're going to be slinging in some pretty good stretch goals in as well, I think. So all in all, there's going to be a really good basket of goodies for all levels, all price ranges, but they're all going to be done to the highest level, and that's what I'm excited about. And doing it through Kickstarter, like I said, will allow this to be a quality project.
Yeah. So if you're watching this thinking, not sure, wait and see, fine. Pledge as little as £1 or follow the channel, this page. But I think you're gonna love being involved in our project, as James said.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, you know, we're growing this from the ground up. This is day zero on the journey of not just the Necromancer book, but Pathfinder Chronicles, which is our imprint publishing. So all our books will be under the Pathfinder Chronicles banner. So yeah, there'll be channels for that you can follow and keep up with the news, stories, what we're up to, get some insider trading. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, so there's going to be, we're building a world, and this is day one. So it'd be good to get as many people on board as possible.
I wonder if we tease as well, because I know I kind of think it's funny because you think it's funny because of the differences between you and I. But when you were doing the illustrations, you know what's coming. When you were doing the illustrations, and I was like, you know, as you said, we want it to be sort of part of a series. And we talked about ideas, like what the next one would be, like a cyberpunk one or a steampunk one. Again, how can we make sure it's familiar but has our own twist on it? And of the originals, weirdly, as someone who loves sci-fi, as you can see, I never liked the sci-fi ones as much as the Tolkien-esque ones from fighting fantasy books. And I thought, well, maybe I could do that. I really love Alien, is one of my favorite movies, and Romulus was just out. And I spoke to you, and I basically went away and wrote one, didn't I? And I wrote out 3 weeks and said to you, dude, have you finished those illustrations yet? Because I think I've done book 2.
Yeah, I think by the time it took me to do one illustration, you'd written a whole second book. And this is what you do. You know, you hit the caffeine, you put your foot down on the pedal, and then it's just go time. And there's me just leisurely like slapping some ink around. But this is the difference. This is why it's great. You know, I think why we push each other and what's that lovely phrase? It might be from Game of Thrones. That steel sharpens steel. You know what I mean? Where you can only sharpen a blade with another blade. Yeah, I think that's probably rubbish, but I just like the phrase.
But I think it again, you know, we've talked about it a lot, and in the process become like 100. Every idea has 100 ideas, and every of those 100 ideas births another 200 ideas. And that's what's been exciting, is it hasn't been an exhausting process, it's been energizing. And then having all these cool ideas, and then I go off and I draw maps about the story and the plot, and I talk to you, and, you know, could you design us a whole new alien concept? So this is the first thing, and your involvement, you watching this person, thank you, welcome, you know, if you're watching this is what you're going to be a part of, and there's more to come.
Yeah, and we want people to be involved, like especially on social media and stuff like that, because we are going to be asking questions. We want people to say, what book is missing in terms of the whole realm. What hasn't someone done? What would you like to read or see? Or we want to know what everyone else thinks, not just us two Herberts. We want to pick everyone's brain and find out what's the need out there, because we want to do some stuff that's very familiar. We want to do some stuff that's just drastically different and crazy. So we're going to be pestering you all, I think, a lot.
So should we pivot the backstory, in case anyone has got this far and anyone is interested. Getting to the story of us, because I think from a Kickstarter point of view and a project point of view, the fact that we're a pair of old friends and long-term collaborators, I think is kind of cool.
It is. I mean, so we met when I was working on Metal Hammer magazine, which, if not everyone knows, is a monthly rock and metal magazine, best in the world, no doubt. It's been going since the mid-'80s. Oh my God, that's an old one. And so at the time, I was hired as designer in about 2001. And then I made my way up to art director over the period of years. And then in 2000, when did you join? 2005, this guy joined and started to head up things like the online page. You also presenting podcasts, writing a load of features, editing, everything. You were basically a kind of do-it-all kind of guy on the journalism front. And then you just kind of created a name for yourself, and we became fast friends just doing what we loved, which was writing, designing, all in the space of heavy metal world. And we got to do some really fun things. And yeah, we're still friends now, which is remarkable.
Considering how much of a dick I am. The memories that I have, James, weirdly, are none of them are to do with actual working. So the first memory, I think I told you this again recently, my first memory of you, I'd only been there a couple of weeks, was in the kitchen at Metal Hammer when we were at Baker Street. And I was in the kitchen making lunch, and I sort of put a tea bag in the bin, and I looked into the bin. In the bin, in its packet, was an almost completely uneaten piece of carrot cake in a box. And I thought, what kind of lunatic throws away cake, but they barely eat any of it, and puts it in the box? So I got it out of the bin, and then you came in to have your lunch, and I then said this to you: what kind of lunatic puts an almost entirely uneaten piece of cake in a box in a bin? And you went, me. and we've been friends ever since. What?
And then it became who's the actual lunatic here? The guy fishing food out of the bin? And it wasn't your last adventure into bin diving. There was also but it was all you had standards. But whenever we would pass something on the street, we're like, Gill, do you want to have this on this half-eaten kebab? And you'd be like, oh.
Yeah. There are probably 20% of the belongings you see around me have come from a skip or a bin or a tip. The other stuff, that the non-professional memories of us of those days, is doing radio shows on Total Rock.
Yeah, we did that. I think Total Rock at the time was, and it's still going, was a kind of community rock and metal radio station based in Tottenham Court Road in the middle of Soho. And they would have people, whether it's, bands would come on and do a show, people from different magazines, label people, it's this real kind of pick and mix of just people. And there was a Metal Hammer show, but the person who was doing before, which I think was KTP, was it Katie? Shout out to Katie. Couldn't do it anymore. So they shouted out, I was like, who wants to do it? And me and you just kind of looked at each other and went, yeah, we'll have a go. And they kind of looked at it, we're like, yeah, Gill, yes. But they're like, the designer wants to do it.
Designer?
What's he going to do? Talk about fonts? But it was a great thing, because we'd finish work and then we'd go into Tottenham Court Road, grab a couple of beers maybe and some snacks. And it was just another chance to hang out, play our favourite tunes, and talk to the 12 people who were listening. And it was great. And I think it was because of things like that we just kind of became friends, because we actually spent time together outside of work doing fun things. Not just for you. I know as a journalist, you were flying around the world with bands, and then you'd come back and just be sitting at your desk typing. And I'd be on deadline working till 2 a.m, trying to get the pages to print. So the office occasionally was pretty stressful. And when we finished a day, the last thing we wanted to do was spend more time with these people or this work. But me and you were the only people who actually did it and liked it and actually spent time together. We still playing music and doing stuff within the industry and going to gigs, but I think we found a joy in it, which we really kind of, which not a lot of people had.
And also, you and I also like a lot of the same music. So going to gigs is a good time, sort of enforced non-work hanging out. If you know what I'm saying, like I would go. Did you and I go see Black Crows together at Brixton?
No, but we did go to the Nine Inch Nails listening party for their album With Teeth. And I'm not sure anyone knows about Gill, but he's a big fan of dance music as well. And so this Nine Inch Nails album With Teeth was a bit more kind of disco orientated. And the album started playing in this room of like dignitaries of the music industry. And Gill's there doing his hi-hat impression and like pumping up the room. And I think that was just one of the best moments for me. Gill doesn't play by the rules. This is great.
I think one of ours was going to see Monster Magnet at the Astoria, but the story about that's offensive, so I won't tell it.
Okay.
I'll have to bank that.
We'll do that for the after hours edition of
that's the Easter egg. Anyway, all right. So let's kind of bring this into land.
Yeah. And
let me ask you, why should someone back this project?
I mean, it's kind of. We've kind of answered it before, but if it was me, and I knew nothing about this, and I went on, say, Kickstarter, looking for game books, looking for fancy RPG books, or any kind of, something to get involved in, this would really strike me as something that means something to someone. You can just see how much work and effort and joy we've put into it, because I think we've made something. No, I know we've made something really good that we would enjoy if we were looking for something similar. And so I feel like, even though I'm one of the guys that made it, I can happily say this is one of the favorite things I've ever made. I've had so much fun doing it, and I think it really shows. And I'll be honest, like you said before, we have a lot of fun doing it, but we're serious about this. We're serious people making a serious book, and it looks great, it reads great, and I think all in all, anyone who gets involved in it will just have a good time and really enjoy, immersing themselves in the world that we've created. And like I said, this is day one. This is our first book, so it's a great time to get involved.
I'm going to add a point that I haven't made, which is we've done our beta copies.
Yep.
I'm very much like a story-based person, a writing-based person. You're a very visual person, and graphic and design, and layout and structure. One of the kind of elements of it is, of course, gameplay and the gaming. So the book's gone out to, at least one guy's my age who's like a crazy gamer. Also does Tyranids, and that's his kind of 40k oeuvre. But he's a hardcore gamer. So in playing the book, he's had all this amazing feedback about what's been really challenging. He looks for like exploits, which was a new word to me in computer games. And he's just pushing at the gameplay. How can I make more money? How can I get more spells? How can I beat this beast? How can I find these things? And so he's been really pushing at the game and has found it really challenging. And that has been brilliant feedback. So there's a couple of corrections to make. But what has been brilliant is that someone who loves gaming and loves things to be hard, not hard, but challenging enough. It's boring if it's easy. I encrypted the Sorcerer about 4 weeks ago. I think I did it in an hour. So whereas people love House of Hell, Creature of Havoc, the slightly more challenging ones, and that has been the best feedback. So I know it's a bit of a long-winded answer to the question, is why should someone back this project? Is because you're going to love this really challenging game that reads like a gothic horror novel and looks like your favorite graphic novel, all wobbled together into one. So that's why I think someone should back this project.
Do you think that's why we've made something that we feel is something that people can keep forever? It's something you don't just keep, you try and throw away. It's something that you can delve into and delve out, because for me, I feel like every time you try it, you'll get a different story.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the book, but I think you specifically have written something which allows you to get something new every time.
Yeah, and you found with the first time you did the book. Again, I don't want to give too many spoilers about the thing that you did, and that's kind of the point. Is that you would, if you, I think it would be almost impossible to do this first time. I think it would be impossible because it's so circuitous in the things that you have to do to piece together.
Yeah,
and so it is layered. So it's unlike most of the books you see around me, which are novels that you read once and then who revisits that many novels, whereas this will become these journeys that you sort of you go on and piece together and need to find what lives where and how lives how you piece it all together. So yeah, it certainly is a bit of a gift that will keep on giving.
Yeah, although I hope no one gets, because like in the original books, there will occasionally be, you open a door, an axe swings down, chop your heads off. It's you get those occasional surprises, and sometimes that's just the way it is. So like if you make a wrong decision, you could be in real trouble. So there are some real pitfalls in this book, but there are some, like you said, some real exploits and kind of cheat codes where you can take a nice diversion around some danger. But it's either way, you are going to find yourself in a pickle now and again, which I think is the whole point. It has to be challenging, and I think that's what's going to make it a keeper. All right, so why should anyone support this campaign?
The very first thing, the main reason to support this campaign is because you will get a copy of Legion of the Necromancer, whether that's the paperback or the folio luxury edition that we're going to do a large edition of, and then we have prints and digital editions and so on. So you get the cool stuff, you get the amazing edition of this really fun immersive game book that we've done. There's homage to the greats, Steve Jackson, Ian Livingstone, the Fighting Fantasy series. That's the first reason. The second reason is the reason that you said, which is that you get to be a part of this adventure that we're on as a pair of creators with a vision into the future. So you get to come on this journey with us. And reason number 3, if you support with even as little as £1, you get a thank you in the thanks page of the book.
Wow, I think that's worth doing. I mean, what's £1 these days? But there is a section on the Kickstarter that if you just want to support the campaign and you don't want any of the products, you can obviously just donate to the campaign to allow us to bring these things to life. And it would put a lovely warm glow in our black hearts. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks for your interest. Follow us here or one of our many channels. We look forward to hearing from you, and we look forward to receiving your pledge.